But talking about its global structure, some people argue that feminism is at the very least dead in the West. Now, I disagree with this, as hopefully has been highlighted before, but these same people often declare themselves to be humanists. Now, as a humanist also, because I'm not restricted to a single title of identity, I am not a nationalist. I see people in countries and my concerns do not stop at the borders of those countries. That is what being a humanist is about.
Here's why you're wrong about your little analogy. I'm a humanist, and I agree with you on this idea of how our sympathy and our attention should not be bound by borders. However, that's not what people are saying when they say that feminism is dead in the West. When we say that feminism is dead in the West, we say that we no longer need feminism in the West. That something like egalitarianism or something like humanism will suffice in the West. People like me, which I don't necessarily speak for all anti-feminist, but some people like me are even willing to say that if I was in a different country, say Saudi Arabia or another Middle Eastern country, that I would potentially back up feminism in those countries. So it's not to say that feminism must only be contained within the country that they are, but that within the context of that country, it is no longer needed.
And here we see one of the major flaws of doing multiple revisions of what you want to say. I forgot to add something which I can use here as my counter-argument. Each year in my country, around the time of summer, discussion draws to female genital mutilation. The reason is that it is about this time of year where girls from the UK and wider Europe are typically shipped off to other nations where they are mutilated. They do this now because it gives them time to heal before school, thus they're less likely to be found out and reported to the police. This is why it's very difficult to fight female genital mutilation. Is this a Western issue or not? After all, they are Western citizens living in the West. On top of this, we're talking on the internet right now. Under whose jurisdiction does the internet come under? I get messages very often from the Middle Eastern atheists who are trying to reach out for support, for comfort, to anybody. What right do I, or anyone else for that matter, have to deny them this? The same for feminists of other nations. And again, humanism suffices in the same as it suffices for LGBT plus activism or work to remove racial privilege. Feminism just notes a specific part of my identity, which may be lost in simply using humanism. Again, I have found issue with every point you've made thus far, so I still consider feminism to be needed in the West, but I just wish to note this either way. These are all matters I care about, but when it comes to feminism, we suddenly change as, oh no, we can't display international solidarity. No, we can't even say the F word or discuss topics even remotely related to that word, as apparently it offends too many people. It's amazing what people will do just to try and stop me talking about feminism. Fact is that I'm not going to be bent by a little bad language, and I give as good as I get, sometimes even worse.
So nobody is gonna stop you from talking about issues like female or male genital mutilation, or um, things like abortion rights, or self-body rights, or bodily integrity, or any of these particular issues on their own. No one's going to stop you from talking about those. Hell, no one's really going to stop you about talking about feminism.
First of all, I never stated they were going to stop me. I don't think they have the power, at least not unless they utilise the DMCA system, but that's only happened once, and I believe that to be more the fault of TJ's network being run by incapable buffoons. I said some individuals very much wish me to stop and will attempt to nudge me in that way using abusive language. I did not blow this out of proportion and claim, oh my god, this is a terrible thing, I am such a victim, please pity me. You are the one blowing what I actually stated out of proportion. But do carry on.
What you are seeing is people not liking the fact that you are okay talking about it from a feminism perspective. And honestly, I don't necessarily agree that people should stop you or try to bully you into not talking about it. It might even be, honestly, a knee-jerk reaction to you saying that you're a feminist. But the thing is, that something that you must understand is that feminists have been known to do this, as we have seen in Canada, where feminists have done things like pull fire alarms to stop MRA conventions, or in similar fashions have been done. And feminists talking about not wanting to have safe spaces for men to talk because the feminist spaces should be good enough.
Suicide statistics, workplace injuries, men not having access to their children, all these things that are organizing around are largely legitimate things, but they fail to make the connection that feminism, like, they are symptoms of patriarchy, and feminism is already working to address these things, that, women are better caretakers than men, so men don't have access to their children. Right?
And so when you have feminists doing this, the automatic reaction from a lot of us is to say, it is to knee-jerk in that same way that feminists knee-jerk. And it is a knee-jerk reaction to not necessarily try to shut you up, but to attack you when you say it. And it is because that is the kind of things that we face when we try to talk about men's issues. So it's a knee-jerk in response to the knee-jerks that feminism give us.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay, MRA, go away! Racist, sexist, anti-gay, MRA, go away!
And yet these individuals will likely tell you that the reason they knee-jerk is because of the way that MRAs react to feminists. This is a circular blame game going on, and I'm just simply saying bugger that. I open up to people by noting that I do not care what title you use. I care on how you act towards me, how you treat me. Treat me like shit, and guess how I'm going to treat you. And this is to both sides, by the way. Now, in my personal experiences, the proportions vary drastically between sides, but then again, a typical sample. But ultimately, it's all I have to go with, and I treat each new person as a different case. I just want the same for me. This is all I ask in my video. For people to stop having this knee-jerk reaction. That was the point, the very core of it, the very substance. I also find it funny that 2 of the clips utilised came from a video in which I completely tore into the group called Bashback Feminism. The first was the one with the guy in the grey hoodie and the red shirt, whilst the second was that of the awfully asinine screamer with the pink bandana and megaphone. Now, back then, I just arrived on the scene. I classed myself as both MRA and feminist, and it is since then that I've lost the desire to call myself an MRA, part and due to my experience. I made the mistake back then of assuming that if a woman is straight and an MRA, she is likely married to an MRA. What I hope you understand is that I'm more than just a claim. I'm being genuine in how I approach things. I mean, This video has earned a higher approval rating than any I have made in support of feminism. So let's just rule out the claim that I do this to become popular.
They took a poll in England of women, and 70% of them didn't want the vote. They thought...
I know, and the women in Saudi Arabia want the burqa. I know, it's because of the culture that they grew up in. Karen, give me a thank you. Look, everything's going great, but you're not being reasonable. You're being ridiculous. Give me a thank you. Give me a thank you for feminists for getting your right to vote. Otherwise, stop voting and go make me a ham sandwich.
I don't nearly have the patience to watch through that much of Cenk to find out the context of this clip, but a few clips of high emotions and really quite bad arguments from both sides is irrelevant. I did not know that Cenk wrote the Feminist Bible. But even then, I do not demand that you take on that title. If you don't want to identify as feminist, then fine.
You might not. You might not demand that people take on the title of feminism. And that's, again, this I'm going back to this idea that you, and I understand that you even named this video My Brand of Feminism, but you're still associating yourself with the kinds of feminists who do say things like Lacey Green's, if you believe in equality, you're a feminist. Or even Emma Watson, who says very similar things.
It is. I think men think it's a women's word, that it's only women, it's only for women. But it really just means that you believe in equality. And if you stand for equality, then you're a feminist. Sorry to tell you. You're a feminist. I'm sorry. You're a feminist.
That they do want to force this label on people. And so a lot of the reactions that you are getting aren't necessarily aimed at you per se, but are aimed at the feminists who we hear constantly try to force the label of feminism and everyone else, regardless of whether they want to take it on or not.
A single movie star answering a question in real time is hardly the best you could have gone with. But even then, all this displays is the lack of knowledge on the diversity of the feminist movement. No dogma, remember. So yes, you are hitting irrelevancy, as my title suggests, and this does not then justify the array of responses I received. So why is this in discussion? Mentioning Captain McCall once more, he does not identify as a feminist. He doesn't really identify as anything. That still does not stop us being friends and working together as we hold a mutual respect. Now, when it comes to most MRAs, this respect is oftentimes lacking. See, they claim to be for men's rights, yet the vast majority spend their entirety attacking or attempting to poison the well of feminism. Men's rights are not at risk from feminism, and thus will not be found in fighting feminism. Ergo, the MRAs typically present a false position.
You are wrong in so many ways here. This is actually probably the reason that I wanted to make this response for this statement alone. Because in the same video in which you are complaining about people generalizing feminism thoughts and lumping you together with people like TJ, and how wrong it is for people to lump you with radical feminists and lump you with radical atheists, you yourself lump together all MRAs. Well, maybe not all, because you use that weasel word of most. But you still did it. You are doing the exact same thing that you are complaining about people doing to you.
And this is entirely false. I mean, this point was purely presented to explain why I have personally found it difficult to work with MRAs, as unlike Captain McCall, who was a non-associating in this respect and is willing to ignore titles and work for a better goal, this is rarely my experience with MRAs. And yes, I do indeed note not all of them, but also, given the entire context of the quote beyond the mind segment you acknowledged, yet still played, I was discussing my personal experience. That is why I opened with Captain McCall before leading into my experience in working alongside MRAs. I am not making a statistical claim about MRAs elsewhere, but those in my proximity do not seem to be able to overcome my usage of feminism, and thus refuse to cooperate due to my usage of said word, even if we have the same goals. I still try every single time, treat every single person as a new case. Sadly, that does not always work. I do not go out and attack videos by men's rights activists. I do not blindly insult all of them. When it comes to the atheist gamer and then the amazing atheist, I went after what they specifically stated, their own actions, their own words. I do surgical takedowns on confirmed issues. Meanwhile, most MRAs that I come across and deal with see the signature of feminist and go full ballistic without asking any further questions. That is the issue. Lost in Thought is a series on my own experiences and thoughts. It was a quick way for me to try and get across some of the mental kinks I have, i.e. how I work. My second video in this series discussed my experience with campus faith warriors, completely detached from the scripture like my usual videos are attached to. You assume that my video was meant to do more than tell those MRAs who have treated me this way, thus prompting this response to back off and listen first. It's not, and it's also, I note the fact that these people I mention are the very same people who are listening. I just note that if MRAs I come across want me to start interacting more pleasantly with them, then I need to begin with some basic respect. If I'm wrong about MRAs from my experiences, then please show me by acting on this. Display the good that can come from you. I don't want them to become the religious in my view. Oftentimes I begin to lose the respect I have for the theist I respond to in my videos. My responses in these cases become less for them and more from the people listening from the borders, the sidelines, those undecided, and then for those on my side wishing to learn the arguments that I am making. So, maybe consider this. If my second video on campus faith warriors are purely about scripture, etc., I'd understand you not noticing that it was about my personal experiences. But it was about my personal experiences. It was about things that neither the Bible nor the Quran calls for, but I can discuss my experiences there with specific people, just like I can do that here with specific people, and request for them in my specific proximity to simply back off and simply listen. That's all I'm doing. Actual issues faced by male victims, not fictional ones.
I'm going to stick in here a whole bunch of things for you to see about what MRAs do to help men. And I hope that you learn not to stereotype and not to group everyone together in the same way that you are being grouped together with radical feminists and radical atheists.
I appreciate the examples and I will play them for both me and others to see. But this patronising yet ironically false repetition could just stop here. Please, find a single example where I have attacked an MRA for being an MRA and not for what they've just stated to me specifically, in person, to me. That is what I'm mentioning here as happening to me. You seem to have missed the difference, and it has weakened your position in this video to the fact that you don't really have a position. It is a straw man.
I've been separated for 3 years. I have 4 kids, and I only see them 2 hours every 2 weeks. I'm trying to get to see them more often, but I can't fight in court. I don't have any money, so the minute I got separated, I pretty much lost my kid. I didn't have enough money to rent an apartment.
Jason lost his house, his car, his job, and his ties to his church to move closer to his children.
Basically, it was my bed before I found the trailer. So was a bit small.
The worst thing you can do is to take any destabilizing atmosphere that the child is in and magnify that destabilization by taking the child away from one of its parents. When a child is experiencing divorce, a destabilizing atmosphere, verbal violence, and even physical violence, the most important thing it needs is both parents, especially unless one of those parents is directly abusive to that child.
I personally have known many people who have committed suicide over divorce. Just last week, I'm in the union, I'm chief shop steward. One of my shop stewards drove himself into a tree over divorce.
This is what motivates suicide. When you feel like there's nobody that loves you, there's nobody that needs you, there's no hope of that changing, and you don't have good skills at communicating your emotions and somebody you feel will really listen to you empathetically. When those four things combine, then men are prime candidates for suicide.
Society's on your side anyway, so suck it up.
Boys are most likely to be deprived of their needs and education, most likely to be homeless, most likely to get cancer, most likely to die young and of every major cause, most likely to be victims of war and domestic violence, most likely to be arrested, prosecuted, imprisoned, and even executed while being completely innocent.
What exactly is men's rights? What does that mean?
There are certain issues where men's rights are sort of routinely violated, at least on as far as an equality basis. There are certain situations men can find themselves in where they have essentially no due process, particularly domestic violence and sexual assault cases, where you can be put in jail without any kind of due process at all, or you can be kept from your home. And those types of things, while the laws tend to be gender neutral, they do disproportionately affect men.
This is what men's rights movement and men's rights activists are doing.
I really feel bad about this, as it would be so easy for me just to say, yeah, sure, and move on. But that would be a disservice to my subscribers, as this does not show what you seem to believe it shows. I mean, the clips towards the start show that men can have it really rough, they can have a shit time. A claim I never argued against, regardless of what you seem to believe about the notion of privilege. I never stated men could not have it bad, so that doesn't really refute anything. As for the later videos, they display claims, uncited claims, without mention of the actions to be taken in tackling said issues that do exist. Therefore, this selection of clips really doesn't go awfully far to impress me in the manner you hoped to do. I'm glad discussion is happening. That's a good sign on its own. But beyond that, I fail to see what you mean by this is what men's rights activists and men's rights movements are doing. I really fail to see it, and again, I am sorry.
So the next time that you want to say that they need to get off their lazy asses to do something, I think you need to get off of yours and research what they are actually doing. And they're not just doing this. They're doing this while feminists are yelling at them that they are racist, homophobes, and sexist. While you have other feminists yelling down at them that they should be thankful for feminism. So how about next time, before you start throwing judgment around at people, you take a hard look at what you're doing. Grouping people together and then getting pissed that you get grouped in with other people.
Your whole video really did rely on that selective focus on what I said, doesn't it? Arrogance does not come off well when you have failed to actually address my points entirely, as you have. Instead, you ignore how my discussion flowed into mention on my experiences of MRAs and declare that I meant something more than I rather clearly stated. You know, this really doesn't come off feeling like some sort of victory for me. I think half of me wanted you to make a case that wasn't so weak as a suspension bridge made out of toothpicks, particularly after someone else kept telling me that you were right throughout your video before I began my critique. I don't know, I just feel rather deflated about the whole thing. And the thing is, I have more to come. You see, Karen responded to me as well. Now, the reason I did this video first was I started it first. That, and she annoyed me by going around in the comment section of her video telling people that I'd failed to respond to her comment as I didn't respond immediately after she posted it. This sort of insinuated that I was avoiding her. I'm surprised that I didn't get a gold G+ notification when she commented. I in fact only noticed she had commented when Captain McCool noted it over Facebook. I have to respond to it, as though she makes some of the same points as Rhetoric&Discourse has here, she then goes on to other aspects. Now, I don't know when I will have this response out. You see, this comes at a really bad time because on the 27th, I fly to Norway. And at the moment, I feel like I want a break from the feminist MRA thing, as my channel is quickly devolving and everyone seems to be becoming divided. And again, every time I make a video on feminism, my subscribers go down, so I can't keep it up continually, else I'll be left with nobody. So yes, I will get to it, I will get it done. There are some really good points I've actually already found to make. So I'll be sure to delve deeper into what I mean by that, but yeah, this is the end for now. I'll see you in my next video, whatever video it may be. I don't know if it will be the Karen video, I do not know if it will be a response to Atheist, maybe something different for a change. Who knows? But I'll see you around.